Welcome to episode 7 of Jalen's Take, the show where I give my take on the best pop culture topics of the week. History has been made this week. DC's Superman and Spider-Man crossover book has finally released. There's just so much to talk about, man. This book was so enjoyable. This book that DC published gave us 8 different crossover stories, all surrounding different Superman and Spider-Man characters. We got our main story of Superman and Spider-Man teaming up. We also got one for Lois and Mary Jane, Superboy Prime and Black Suit Spider-Man, Young Superboy and Spider-Man 2099 was an awesome one. We got a Jimmy Olsen and Carnage crossover, Jonathan Kent and Ben Parker, which just makes so much sense. We got a crossover between the Daily Planet and the Daily Bugle, which was low-key one of my favorites. And then we also got one between Power Girl and Punisher. Our main crossover between Superman and Spider-Man was just so good here. The villains of this story were Dr. Octopus and Brainiac, which is such a good team up. We know that Brainiac loves to team up with mad, evil scientists, so seeing him team up with Doc Ock just makes perfect sense. We also got to see Clark Kent and Peter Parker do some investigative reporting together, which also makes sense considering the two characters and their secret identities both work at newspapers. This crossover is just so fun, man. Seeing these two team up and swing and fly around the city together was just cool. We get to see them fly around the city saving people from Brainiac and Doc Ock. At some point during the story, Superman figures out where the two villains are, and he starts flying to space to deal with Brainiac and sends Spider-Man off to go find Doc Ock. Come to find out though, the villains actually switched places, so we get to see Superman fighting Doc Ock with kryptonite arms, and we get to see Spider-Man fight Brainiac. One moment that I really like in this fight is a moment between Superman and Doc Ock, where Superman starts trying to get through to the scientists behind Doc Ock, and he starts saying things like, "You're killing innocent people, this isn't you, you would never do this." Superman talks about how Clark Kent wrote an article on Otto Octavius and how he used to be a brilliant scientist. I like that no matter what, Superman always thinks he can just get through to the person, to the villain, but eventually we get another classic moment of Spider-Man being crushed by rubble, and in order to save the day, he has to get out from under this rubble, of course. We get this scene of Superman saying, "I believe in you," and Peter just trying to lift the rubble off him so hard, and eventually he does get it off. And after Spider-Man deactivates the device, Superman's able to save the day and stop Brainiac's ship from crashing into Metropolis. This team up was so good, man. Everybody should go buy this comic if you can. We need more of this duo badly, bro. Almost all of the crossovers in this book were just complete bangers. There's gonna be another comic like this coming out, except this time it's gonna be titled Spider-Man and Superman, and it's gonna be published by Marvel instead of DC. That book is gonna be coming out sometime in April, and I'll be covering that one as well. I just cannot wait, bro. These comics are getting super good this year, man. Honestly, I didn't like the Lois Lane and Mary Jane story too much. To summarize this story, in the background, you have Superman and Spider-Man fighting a giant Sentinel, which are the giant robots that like hunt mutants. That's going on in the background, while the main focus of this story is a conversation between Lois and MJ as they try to escape the danger. And throughout this conversation, both of them are pretty much talking about, oh, like I've been a damsel in distress so many times before, like this isn't stressful for me at all, like I'm fine now, like this is normal, I'm used to it. And then there's even this weird moment where mid-fight, Spider-Man comes over to MJ and says, "Oh MJ, if anything happened to you, I don't know what I would have done." And Mary Jane makes this really weird joke where she says he's got a thing with bridges, referencing how Gwen Stacy died on a bridge. And pretty much this entire story is just MJ and Lois just standing around watching Spider-Man and Superman save the day. And then at one point, Gambit just pops up out of nowhere asking for cards so he can join the fight, and Lois is just carrying a pack of cards on her for some reason. That's pretty much the whole story. Yeah, I kind of didn't like this one. This was the only one where I was like, interesting. Everything else in this book was super good though, man. The next story in this book was Black Suit Spider-Man and Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime takes Spider-Man and pretty much just immediately punches the page and takes them through reality. And Superboy Prime takes Spider-Man to the High Evolutionary to try to trade Spider-Man for his own freedom. And this is one of those stories where Superboy Prime pretty much has to be convinced that like he's got some good in him. And that's what Spider-Man does, and these two go off to fight the High Evolutionary. This story kind of ends off like open-ended, almost on a cliffhanger. I really hope that this story gets continued in the next issue of Spider-Man Superman that we get next month. Another crossover we got in this book was Superboy and Spider-Man 2099. This crossover casts a super wide net because we're taking a kid version of Clark Kent as Superboy and Spider-Man 2099, a super future version of Spider-Man. This story also has Batman Beyond in it for some reason. I'm not necessarily sure why. And in this story, for some reason, Superboy is going after LexCorp and Spider-Man is going after Alchemax, two just evil science companies. And both Superboy and Spider-Man talk about how these evil science companies are gonna destroy their future if they don't get stopped today. And the story ends with Superboy telling Spider-Man and Batman that they need to go out to the source wall. This is another one of these stories where I'm like, this has to be a cliffhanger, right? Surely they're gonna continue this in the next one, because this was just so good. I feel like Batman Beyond was kind of shoehorned into this story, but I still kind of enjoyed his presence because he gave Superboy an Orlob. Yeah, I just really need this crossover to be finished badly in the next part, bro. I love Superboy stories, and seeing Superboy team up with Spider-Man 2099 and Batman Beyond is just really cool. Like, this whole book is so cool, bro. Our next story is about Jimmy Olsen and Carnage. The book opens up with J. Jonah Jameson yelling at Jimmy Olsen, telling him to get him pictures of Spider-Man or he's fired. And in the very next panel, we see Peter, Felicia, and MJ all walking out of the Daily Bugle together with Jimmy right behind them. In this panel, Peter has his arm around Felicia and he's holding MJ's hand. I don't know how he did it, bro. I don't know how he did that. I don't know how he managed to make that happen. I like it though. I respect that fully. I don't know how he managed to make that happen, but I like it. But since Jimmy's looking for Spider-Man, MJ tells him he's the gooey, webby, reddish spider guy. You can't miss him. And later, while Jimmy is looking for Spider-Man, he runs into a guy that meets that exact description. But of course, it's not Spider-Man. Carnage just absolutely messes Jimmy up, bro. Just completely just beats him and he's bleeding and everything. And Jimmy goes to activate his signal watch, which automatically calls Superman for help, but apparently it's got an update and it's not working right now. And the story ends with Carnage killing Jimmy Olsen. I've said this twice and this is the third time I'm saying this. There's no way that this story does not get a part 2, bro. How is Carnage just gonna kill Jimmy Olsen like that? My jaw actually dropped when I got to the story, bro. I can't believe they really just killed Jimmy, bro. One of the best crossovers in this entire book though was the story between Jonathan Kent and Ben Parker, aka Superman's dad and Uncle Ben. In this story, there's a giant storm in Kansas that both Ben Parker and Jonathan Kent are trying to escape. Of course, Jonathan Kent offers help to Ben Parker, and right before the two get out of the storm, they find these two kids that also need help. So of course, these two great men help the kids. It's a very simple story, and it ends with Superman and Spider-Man again talking about how they were raised in different worlds, but they have the similar stories. Spider-Man is a kid from the city, Superman is a kid from the country, but they were both raised by super kind, compassionate, loving men, and that's what shaped them into the heroes that they became. The final crossover in this book is the one between the Daily Planet and the Daily Bugle. This story follows a debate between J. Jonah Jameson and Lois Lane, Spider-Man's biggest hater versus Superman's biggest supporter. And in this story, Jameson basically talks about how his problem with Spider-Man is that Spider-Man has no accountability. And he talks about how the real problem is that Spider-Man wears a mask and that nobody knows his secret identity. And he says this is a problem Spider-Man has that Superman doesn't have, which is just super ironic, of course, because Superman does have a secret identity. And you also can't really hold Superman accountable to anything. He kind of chooses to hold himself accountable, if anything. So I just thought that was super funny. This story just really brings to light though how J. Jonah Jameson's issue with Spider-Man is not really completely illogical. Like, even though he's super extreme and super biased with his reporting, he is right in the fact that Spider-Man wearing a mask kind of does hold him from accountability. He goes around the city fighting many people. He's responsible for a couple different deaths, if we're being honest. He's also responsible for a lot of property damage, and he kind of just gets away with it because nobody knows who he actually is. Is he saving the day? Yes. But again, he can't be held accountable. So I don't know. It brings up an interesting point, I think. Now, the final story in this crossover is absolutely ridiculous, bro. It's a crossover between Power Girl and the Punisher. Now, the story opens up with Power Girl approaching this building and she's going on a blind date. Punisher, for some reason, is like the doorman at this building. Power Girl walks in the building and come to find out that the person she's going on a blind date with is none other than freaking Paul, bro. Paul again. We cannot get rid of this guy, man. This is the same Paul that ruined Peter and MJ's relationship in the comics, bro. This is the same Paul that somehow made his way into Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, on this date, Power Girl was just not enjoying it at all. She said she would rather fight Darkseid than be on a date with this guy, bro. And that's when Punisher bursts in the room saying he's there to save Paul. So Power Girl and Punisher team up to fight all the villains, and at the end of the night they just continue hanging out because I guess they enjoyed each other's company. And you know what, I kind of like them. This is a nice little dynamic, you know, I ship it. All in all, this Superman and Spider-Man crossover book was just so freaking good, man. So enjoyable. The only story I didn't really like was the Lois Lane and Mary Jane one. one, and honestly, that's kind of like the second most important one here, if I'm being honest. But that's okay. I still really enjoyed this book for the most part. What's your guys' hot take this week? If there's anything you guys want my take on, make sure to let me know down in the comments.